What's up, people? Back with another reaction, back with some more Duran Duran, and we're going to listen to a version of Come Undone. Now, I was intrigued to listen to this track because I'm a historian, more on that in a second. Now, those of you who watch my reaction to the single version, or the album version, or I think a live version, I think I reacted to 3 versions, maybe it's just 2, but those of you who saw any of my reactions to Come Undone previously will know I'm a big fan of the tune. It's one of the rare Duran tracks that actually does go back to my youth, or my teen years, I should say. I remember hearing that in Ordinary World on the radio and, you know, seeing the music videos. So yeah, I've been a big fan of this tune for a long time. I love this sort of like dark submarine feeling. I love Tessa Niles' voice on the track. I love the guitar work. So yeah, the original track is just a standout tune to me for a long time, which again, a number of Duran tracks have entered that category in more recent times, but this one actually does go back. But the reason I was intrigued to do this version in particular, which comes from the Come Undone single, is it's called the Fin de Siècle version, or I think it's just Fin de Siècle. Now, I'm a historian who focused for my graduate research on indigenous American history in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, specifically the Muskogee peoples and the way they interacted with various you know, colonial governments and state governments and other tribal entities and so on. But inevitably, when you get degrees in history, you do have to study different periods and regions, although, as I've talked about before, periodization is a very subjectivized and ultimately didactic process, and indeed, like, the way in which we define periods and we see them on some level as supposedly like discrete homogeneous entities that are fundamentally different with very clear borders than other decades, say, or just, you know, certain types of periods described qualitatively. They are ultimately helpful to understand in some ways. They can be misleading, but they are just basically an interpretive lens. They are essentially history, not the past, which is to say history is accounts about the past, whereas the past is actual things that happened. So fin de siècle is a phrase that was used in particular in relation to European history, and it's related to a couple different concepts, in particular the long 19th century, which is the idea that many of the political, cultural, and social trends and ways of interacting that had come to dominate Europe in the 19th century extended into the first decade and a half or so of the 20th century, meaning in some ways the 19th century persisted well into the 20th century. But ultimately, by the time you get to the middle of the 1910s, the Great War changes a lot of that. But yeah, bottom line, the idea of the fin de siècle is that the sort of decay or decadence of those essentially they had outlived their purpose. The sort of moral, political, cultural, and social configurations that had come to dominate Europe had ultimately become sort of supersaturated and again sort of decadent and decayed. And so there was this sort of malaise or ennui that gripped many people who were sort of cognizant of this sort of like, you know, breakdown in systems that were perhaps, you know, antiquated in the first place. So the idea of a track, giving a track the subtitle Fin de Siècle, number one, it suggests a historical literacy. And number two, I'm intrigued in the way that perhaps it'll suggest or it'll convey a sort of a malaise, a sort of discomfort with the direction that things are heading, and this sense of perhaps impending doom, which again, when you get to the Great War, I think for some people who had, you know, been seeing the interpretive framework of their time and place like that, I think it would have confirmed for many people the very worst things. Because again, the concept of like modern nationalism essentially really begins to take root in the second half of the 19th century. And ultimately a sort of fervent and increasingly like aggressive nationalism in many ways and in many places leads the world to what we call the Great War or World War I. So again, I think for many people, the sort of idea that the way we do things, especially as technology continues to increase, is ultimately, you know, leading to ruin. And when you mix that with a sort of, again, decayed and antiquated and perhaps decadent socio-cultural fabric, there was this sense of, you know, things are coming to an end, even if it took longer than the full 19th century. In any case, so let's get to it. This is Come Undone, the Fin de Siècle version. I don't think it says remix, as I said. I think it just says Fin de Siècle, or La Fin de Siècle. In any case, let's get it. This is Come Undone, La Fin de Siècle. Oh my god, it's brilliant.
Immaculate dream made reference you. I've been waiting for your sign with a home tattoo. Happy birthday to you was created for you.
Can ever keep from falling apart.
The vocals isolated, their quality shines even brighter.
It'll take a little time, might take a little cry.
This is brilliant, this is amazing.
Now we try to stay blind to the hope and fear outside. Hey child, stay wild than the wind and blow me into the crowd. Who do you need? Who do you love? When you come undone. Who do you need? Who do you love? When you come undone. Words plainly deja vu, like a radio tune. I swear I've heard before. Change, is it something real? All the magic I'm feeding off
The
your
haunting quality of this
Can ever keep from falling apart.
notably heightened.
Cannot believe you're taking my heart. Tell me reason.
lost in a snow-filled sky. We'll make it alright.
It's like across the skies, across the years of like his voice echoes.
To stay blind to the hope and fear outside.
That very high, like percussive layer. Can't quite make out what it is. my brain can think of no other word right out of the gate. Fantastic. I mean, it's a, you know, do I like it better than the original? It feels blasphemous to ask the question, and yet I have to, because that was just an incredible experience. Once again, I think part of the way the atmosphere hit me is based on, you know, things I was talking about in relation to Fin de Siècle, but like, good lord, if that's the atmosphere they were going for, they not only hit it, but they hit it in like a more profound way than I could have imagined. Truly a great tune. And also, I have to say, the way the vocals were isolated, it really demonstrated just how quality the vocals are on that track, both Simon and Tessa. I mean, honestly, and again, like when it gets to the back end and there's sort of like, you know, it's not like perfect call and response, it's almost like, you know, polyphonic layers, but I really enjoyed that moment. You know, it felt very cinematic, certainly. It felt very, again, atmospheric, but it's funny, I've been listening to Japan and I've been listening to like tracks of theirs that have this like very cinematic orchestral quality. That obviously was that and then some, which makes me think that Nick Rhodes probably had a large hand in sort of crafting at least certain aspects of this one. So shout out to him, but again, shout out to the whole group. That's an unbelievable version, and I feel very lucky to have heard it. So shout out to Philip, shout out to Izzy, shout out to everyone who shared Duran material with me. Yeah, this ride is still ongoing, and I'm still surprised at the turns that it can take. So yeah, big ups to them. Do let me know what you think of this. I will see you next time. Peace.